Welcome to the Coaches Show. I'm Darrin Joins, Williamson County Schools Athletic Director. We're talking about tonight's big matchup. Page High School head coach Charles Rathbone, who's with us today, traveling to Franklin. We've got Coach Adkins, your second trip in the Coach Show. Coach Rathbone's second trip this year too. But I mean, you're only in week 3 and you've been on the show 2 times, Coach Adkins. So we're fired up about having you back, man.
Oh, excited. Yeah, I feel like I'm a veteran now. I know the hallways and the turns and starting to know people on a first-name basis, so definitely kind of get familiar with the faces for sure.
Now, Coach Adkins, Coach Rathbone, I find out through a little birdie, a little bald birdie, Tate Matthews, said that, hey, Coach Adkins is a fan of the show. He watches each week. He watches Sports Connection. He checks out the picks. Do the Page Patriots watch the show and check out our picks each week?
I watch it every now and then, you know, when the week's not too busy, but when the week's busy, I can't. But most of the time I watch it.
I have to admit this, Jeremy Qualls, and this is probably early on in my time at Franklin, I don't know, but I remember one time he said, hey, did you watch the show on my? I was like, what show are you talking about? I didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, no. When I first got here, Dan, they kind of told me the kids more who kind of got me onto it. I was like, wait, what is this? And then I saw you and Tate, and every time y'all do the X, I lose it every time. I love it. It's almost like I feel like you choreograph it. You do a couple practice runs before you shoot because it's well timed. It's always in cue for sure.
I can tell maybe by the tone of his voice when it's time. He kind of leaves it up. All right. Anyway, enough for the clowning here in terms of Tate and myself. But believe me, that is a clown show, literally and maybe figuratively sometimes. Coach Rathbone, let me ask you this. So non-region matchup, we were talking about this a little bit before the show came on. Schools are really close to one another, both in Franklin. I know you guys like to say Rudderville, but it's Franklin. Close by, I didn't play for like 35 years, and then 3 years ago, I guess technically 4 because the COVID year, I guess we didn't really play, but this is the 4th time now. Talk about how that series got started back up.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, Coach Webb was the coach, and, you know, I got to know him a little bit. And, as you know, I like playing people that I know and respect. So I called him, and we just kind of put it together. And it just so happened that very next year he decided he was going to take a year off. So, I mean, it's, you know, simple as that. It wasn't any magic or anything like that or challenge or nothing great. It was just 2 friends wanting to play.
And 4 years later, you're still playing, and Franklin's on their 3rd coach since then. So, Coach Atkins, first time in this game. But let me ask you this, Coach, to back up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Last time you were here, you're heading into your first game as head coach. It was Battle of Franklin. You were excited. Talk about that experience, if you don't mind. I know it's a couple games ago, but let us relive that a little bit.
It was definitely one for the memory books. Crowd was unbelievable. Just the whole week kind of leading up to that game, you know, it was kind of a special moment. And everybody, like people I didn't even know in the hallways, like, hey, you ready for Battle of Franklin? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, no, but are you ready? And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And I go, the crowd and then the atmosphere and what it means. And so, you know, they definitely were kind of preparing me because when we went out for warm-ups, you know, it was a pretty good sized crowd. And I was just, you know, I've played in pretty good sized stadiums before and coached. And so it was just kind of first time head coach, first game, a rivalry game. I was a little bit, butterflies were definitely in the stomach for sure. So, but it was, like I said, it was one for the memory books for sure.
Well, what a memory for you. Coach Rathbone, several years later, do you remember your first game as head coach?
I do. We got beat 23-14 up at Kenwood.
Like a true coach, remembered exactly. For me, it was a triple overtime loss at Cheatham County. It's funny how we remember. How about him getting to start in a rivalry and getting a win? I don't know if he totally appreciates it, but 5-10 years down the road, that's going to be really special. What do you think, Coach Rathbone?
Well, you know, that's the robbery, one of the robberies that everybody talks about in Williamson County, Franklin Centennial, Brentwood, Ravenwood, all that stuff. So, I mean, just to play in that and to come out on top, I mean, that's, you know, no matter how it happens, it happens. And, you know, it's got to be a special moment for him.
Well, let's talk about this. Coach Rathbone, we'll start with you. Both being located in Franklin, I think it's really true, especially in today's times. Everyone kind of knows each other, especially here, I think. But Franklin and Page, both being in Franklin, you probably have, in fact, I know some parents out at Page who actually went to Franklin. So you've got some Page folks that have Franklin ties. I feel like the players and families really know one another well.
Right, and the principal at Franklin was Principal at Page before he went
That's
to
right.
Franklin, so before he betrayed us. But I mean, it is very close. But when you figure in traffic, I mean, it's like a 40-minute drive
Yeah.
from Page to Franklin or Franklin to Page. So I mean, it is close. The kids know each other. It's like every other Williamson County school. They all know each other and they like playing each other. They get excited, and it's just it's an opportunity for both schools to showcase what they're able to do.
And like the Centennial matchup, Coach, I'm sure it's kind of the same for your team, that familiarity with one another.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the kids talk about, growing up, playing with one another, and whether it's travel baseball or travel basketball, and, meeting each other on, 7-on-7. So there is that familiarity to it. To me, I got my first taste of Page when I was at Gallatin, right? And we were at 7-on-7. I was like, Page, Page Patriots. And they were, and our kids were kind of underestimating them. And then those first two series, man, they're jamming, they're flying at the ball, like they're borderline tackling, which I love, and the aggression in it. And I was like, hey guys, I was like, this ain't just, they're not just going to walk, lay down on you. And I think Page ended up winning that matchup. But it was just, ever since then, like every time I've looked at Page or seen Page, it's been that same team, tough, physical, and the kids know it too because they've been competing with each other pretty much their whole childhood.
Let's talk a little history in this matchup. Coach Adkins, obviously his first game in it. Coach Rathbone 3-0 since it got started again. It was 5-0 Franklin before the rivalry started back up. Since then, Page won all three, so now it's 5-3 overall. Again, Coach Rathbone 3-0 in the series. Talk about this, Coach. Obviously playing a Williamson County school, you love that. But another 6A test on your schedule, which is important too.
Well, we've actually played 4 games in a row. With that COVID year, we had a cancellation, and so did Franklin. So that's when we originally played the COVID.
Oh, is this 5?
Okay. This is the 5th year in a row.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is it 20? It was 20? Yeah, so 20 was the first one? Okay.
Yeah, and if you remember, everybody was canceling because of
That's
COVID,
right.
and you had to pick up games, so we picked up Franklin.
That's right, that's right.
And then in the middle of that game, there's a long lightning delay, so that's when we actually put the next year's schedule together. But,
Wow, okay.
That's right, and this is, thanks for reminding me, Coach Rathbone. So that makes this the 4th official in terms of the schedule.
Right.
Did that have an impact on it, the fact that you played that year? Like, hey, we ought to just keep this thing going.
Well, sometimes we were very young, and when you got a young team, you gotta kind of schedule wisely and not know. You got to be able to compete with who you schedule. You don't want to schedule somebody that's just going to come in and beat the brakes off of you, and neither team learns. And I think our guys in that game, we got beat on a last-second touchdown over the middle, and I think our guys kind of realized, hey, we could play with these guys, and let's throw some of these teams on the schedule and see what happens.
That's great, Coach. Again, appreciate that reminder. Coach Adkins, let me ask you this. Non-region game, but it's a WCS game. And you hadn't played a league game yet, but I'm going to guess when you end up looking back on this, probably won't feel much different than a regular league game because it's a WCS game.
Well, 100%. It's a situation where, like we already talked about, the familiarity with one another as far as players and coaches and the community. I'm expecting a big crowd tonight because that's the Williamson County standard as far as, when you're playing teams inside the same county, like they're going to travel well. It's just a short little drive down a country road. It'll take you a little while because of traffic, like Coach Rathbone was saying, but having that kind of in-county team that's very talented, that gives you a really good look opportunity to like kind of gauges my first year at Franklin kind of gauges where we're at as a team and how we're where we're at on our standards and other standards in Williamson County.
Let's talk about your matchups last week. We'll start with Coach Rathbone. 31-0 win over Independence. Broke a 6-game losing streak to Independence. Coach, you've outscored your opponents 59-0. Here's something I looked up. I don't know if you realize this. By my count, 8 times in the past 2 years, you've held your opponents to 7 points or less. That's pretty special.
Yeah, we knew coming into the year our defense would be pretty good. When you got 3 Power 4 guys on the defense, you should be good. But I mean, I guess what I'm most proud of is how they could play through a mistake, or they play through something bad happening or a stupid penalty, and they continue to come back that next play and they forget it and they play harder the next play. And with Hazard and Ains and Weebush, those guys leading the way, they've done a really, really good job of setting the offense up. We haven't exactly blown it out of the water offensively yet, but they do a good job of setting us up and finishing drives and things like that. It allows us short field to finish those drives.
Talk about the play of your running backs too, Coach. You've got some young guys, And you get some experienced guys, but the running back room's a little bit different. Overall, pretty young. Talk about that group.
We last week we took our backup quarterback, put him at running back, and he's an explosive athlete. I mean, he's a dynamic runner. He did a great job for us. I think he had a couple of touchdowns, and we brought him in at quarterback, and he threw a touchdown or ran for a touchdown. The guy that I think is really going to be a special running back is Isaac Odie. He's a freshman. He came in and led the team in rushing last week, I think 69, 70 yards on about 6 carries. He's got some wiggle to him and some moves that we usually do not have. Usually we're just a straight downhill running team, try to be physical and pound it up in there. And he's got a little bit of wiggle to him, which gives us a little bit of a different aspect to our offense.
In the course of your career, Coach Rathbone, not a ton of freshmen get on the field at the varsity level in football.
Well, I mean, the last 4 years you've had Hazard, Jake, Knight, William played a little bit, now Isaac Odie. So we're not afraid to play freshmen. It's just, if they're really in varsity, you got to make sure they got the size to hold up, and these guys have.
Well, if Odie can do what those guys that you mentioned have done, you're going to be in pretty good shape there. Coach Adkins, you lose one on the road, 27-7. Don't feel like the score was really representative of the game. Late there in the third quarter, you cut it to 14-7. Another touchdown reception by Lucas Young. But you were right there late against a pretty darn good team.
Yeah, I mean, FRA, they had some really talented guys. They had a core group of sophomores with their seniors kind of leading the helm. Defensively, I thought we played very, very sound football. They created turnovers. I mean, it was the first one was a 4th and goal line stand, literally like on the 6-inch yard line, interception and a fumble. So they gave us opportunities to try to put points on the board offensively at times. We just kept stepping on our own foot. We would try to get momentum and a holding penalty, or early on in the game we were driving and had a costly fumble. So little things like that kind of, once again, they compound over time to where me and Coach Webb kind of chuckle because we cut that lead from 14-7, and that was the defense's probably the worst series they had was that next series back. And so it's just kind of trying to find that ebbs and flows of just, offensively, we just can't take forever. We can't take 3 quarters to score a touchdown with the defense doing the way they're playing, especially against good teams like Page too, because they'll take those short fields, or they'll take the ball and you look up or look away from the field and they've scored a touchdown. So, that's the things we've kind of learned from the game. Last Friday night was just kind of taking care of Franklin and focus on us and just, correcting the middle mistakes, because it literally on film, the old saying, it's not as good as it is and not as bad as it is when you watch the film. And, we're literally one block here, literally the ball 6 inches there from it being a 14-14 game, or, a 14-7 in our favorite kind of game. And just kind of reiterating to those guys like, hey, Rome wasn't built in a day. I know you have a lot of experience, but we're changing, we're changing things a certain way, and the seniors are bought in. So it's just trying to get those other guys, juniors and some sophomores that we play to contribute as well.
You talked about that focus on Franklin deal. Is that particularly important in the non-region games? Because when it gets down to it, they all matter.
Oh, yeah.
When it gets down to it, it's not a region game. Is it even more important, you think, or is that just something kind of a philosophy thing? Let's focus on us.
I think it's a philosophy thing. Like we already talked about before in our locker room, it's, whoever comes across from us, line up, whether it's 7-on-7 or scrimmage, we want to focus on ourselves and our technique and our jobs and our assignment. It's my job as a head coach to schedule opponents that's going to give you a good look, and you can't get any better look than what Page has been doing for the past couple of years and what they're doing right now. With where they've been scoring, the defense has been playing. But yeah, I think ultimately it's just we focus on ourselves to try to get ourselves better for those region games, which we will have next week.
So we've had both of you on the show. We talked about your regions. In my opinion, you both play in the best regions for your classification. Talk about this, Coach Rathbone. First game that's a road game is tonight. You played 2 at home. Preparation a little different in terms of road game?
I think it has to be a little bit different. I mean, you're going into a hostile environment, and I talked to Charles Pullum a little bit earlier, and he was asking about the Franklin crowd, and I have a lot of respect for that crowd because they're a clean crowd in that, you're not going to go in, you're not going to be cursed, and you're not that kind of stuff. They're going to be very respectful and get up for the game. But you go into that kind of environment, and you got to really focus on what your job is, and he's talking about Franklin plays Frank. That's kind of one of our mottos is we play us, just play us. and be ourselves. So we got to make sure we do that. Don't get carried away in the moment. Don't get carried away taking a bus. Thankfully it's not going to be 110 degrees, but even if it was, we would have to fight through that and figure out a way to play through that. And that's the biggest concern is you're not going to be able to go into your locker room. You're going into the visiting locker room. You're not going to have the luxuries of being at home. You're going to be away. And it's the first time we've had to face that this year.
And then you've got 2 more non-regions after this week, and then you've got those final 5.
Correct.
That are all region games. Coach, Atkins, a little different situation. Last non-region game tonight, and then next week, not that you're worried about next week, but it is a big one with Independence coming up.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's been, for me, when I took over at the helm, it's, looking at your region opponents and then, kind of preparing for Indy and stuff. And once again, we're not looking over page at all, one bit. But just wondering, like, how, I think we're benefited enough that they played Indy week 2, and so we're able to we're scouting Page, but also looking at see what Indy did, against Page, or more like what they didn't do, right, based on the score, and just kind of putting that back in the Rolodex here pretty soon. With tonight's game, we've already started breaking down Indy for next week, just how we prepare. So we always break down. So like for Page, we broke down the film after we traded with Coach Rathbone on Saturday and Sunday, have our meetings, but as a staff, we're watching practice and we're kind of doing the monotony of breaking down film, not really looking into detail, but just your down and distance, your personnels and that kind of stuff, to where when we do have that, when we do flip the switch and focus on the Indy that Saturday morning, that a lot of the monotony is already done and we can kind of hammer out a scheme for the game.
Let's talk about your offenses a little bit. Coach Rathbone, we talked about Weebush. He played well again last week. We talked about that running back room getting better. Something we haven't talked a lot about, but you got some guys you really like, your wide receiver group.
Yeah, we really like we like the whole group, really. I mean, everybody knows about McLean Copeland. He can make some plays, but we're struggling to get the ball into Ackerman's hand. He's a big target on the outside, 6'3", worked his butt off in the weight room this year. Could be a physical kid, so we'd like to get the ball in his hand. And, of course, Knight Wilson's made several plays last 2 weeks at the weak side receiver. So, I mean, we're excited about that group. We got some young ones coming along as well that we need to figure out a way to get the ball and spread the wealth and make us less predictable if we could. So, I mean, but I really like that group. They work really hard, and they've come a long way since 7-on-7 days.
Talk about this, Coach, and I've always thought that offensively you're a guy that really will do some modern kinds of things offensively, and that's a compliment. But talk about your defense. Your defense is so good. Do you ever get into that mode of, let's just don't lose the game offensively because the defense is so good. Let's don't make it easy for the other offense to get in great field position or get a pick six or one of those kind of things.
Well, and that's kind of the growth and maturity as a coach. You got to learn from your experiences, and we ask the kids to do that, and we got to be able to do that as well. And that's one thing I learned from the Indy game last year. When we're up 17-0, we come out and we start slinging the ball around and we throw a pick, and they return down inside the 10-yard line when we should have just been pounding the ball and eating that clock. And so I'm kind of learning that style. Listen, I'd rather go the old Oregon offense where you run the play in under 20 seconds and trying to wear the other team down. But it's not the smartest thing for us to do this year.
Coach, let's talk about your wide receiver group. I think that's one that you could argue may be the best group in WCS.
Yeah, you talk about your outside guys. Wills Jackson, 6'5", he's about 210 now. Lucas Young, he can play inside, outside. Luke Thompson, Andrew Dixon, Lane Anderson. And obviously we can't forget about the H. With Jack Flynn and Aiden Elmore. So just kind of across the board, it's just looking as a coach. I'm like, we've got 4 or 5 guys that at times we feel like it's very hard in high school football to guard everybody one-on-one. Like if you double team a Wills, someone's got to be open, or Lucas, and vice versa. Definitely, when I first got here at Franklin, we invested in a jugs machine, and those guys have just been eating it up. Like I'll be working on film or working something late at night, and I'll look outside and they'll be out there, no lights on. I'm like, guys, how y'all seeing the ball? And so I'll turn the lights on for them because they're trying to get better on their own. And that's just kind of a testament to Coach Brinkman. He does a really good job with those guys. Like I'll have certain things that I want done. But he knows how to communicate with them a little bit better. So he'll kind of has their own language, if you will, with the receivers. Like, this is what I want. Okay, he'll go talk to them and they'll do it. But if I try to do it at times, they look at me like I have 3 heads. And I was like, hey, Coach Brinkman, this is what I'm trying to get going. So, but it's really good when you have kids like that. in our meeting this past Sunday, just talking about, I think Brewer at times, like he's a perfectionist, and so he's waiting for that perfect window, or he's waiting for, the old John Madden thing, waiting for the play to develop, and whap, he gets developed because we took a couple sacks last Friday night. And I told him, hey, our 4 best balls have been 50-50 balls to 7 and 3. Like, and it's not pretty. Like the spiral's not great. Sometimes the routes ain't great, but just giving those guys a chance to go make a play, and just telling him just to trust that process of like, it's always going to be, there's going to be time there's going to be a perfect window or a beautiful play, but we got to be okay looking a little sloppy and just throwing it up and saying, hey, 6'5", 6'3" guy, go up and try to make a play for us.
Well, and talk about this, maybe sort of the opposite of Coach Rathbone's team. Maybe you take a few more chances offensively because you probably need to score.
Oh, I mean, definitely. The way the offense is kind of was stagnant last week. That's been kind of our focus this whole week is capitalizing on any field position that we can get, being more aggressive in the play calling, and having the kids kind of buying on that. Like, hey, we're going to take shots, or there's going to be times where we might have to go up tempo, or we install some stuff we haven't shown yet. For that reason, just to kind of give us opportunity, because like I said, we watch Page and you're sitting there like, we just can't, like they're smash mouth football, and like I just don't, me as a coach, I'm like, we can try to go toe to toe with them, but I'd rather try to find out where they're weak, which is nowhere. And spoiler alert, which is nowhere. So it's like, where can we gain 4 yards of play on defense, and or on offense, and defensively, like how can we keep them under 4 yards? That's been pretty much the talk after every practice this week with our staff, is like, how can we achieve this?
Let's talk about your defenses, Coach Rathbone. Obviously, the strength of your team, we've talked about that. They've really played well. But what are some strides you're trying to make defensively? Is it more about depth, or what are you doing there?
We want to be, so coming into the year, we needed to know if our interior was going to hold up, and they've done a tremendous job. I mean, they're big, and replacing Omar from last year, Curl and those guys have done a really good job of doing that. So now it's just freeing up Hazard and Ains outside, trying to get them on some one-on-one matchups so teams can't double team them. We love our safeties down the middle of the field with Knight and Weebush and our corners. So it is, this year building depth, because we are going to lose a lot next year. So, I mean, we got to figure out a way. You always got to be looking forward. You can't be happy with where you are. You got to be looking forward. What are you going to do next year with the year after? And that's kind of where we're at, trying to stay healthy and keep guys on the field and just put them in the best positions to be successful.
And Coach Atkins, your defense, you really stiffened up when you needed to in that Centennial game. And then last week, like we talked about, until late in the third, they had really done their job.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, they play fast and physical. A pretty sound defense. Coach Webb does a really good job with him and his staff of just getting the calls in. The kids, they get to the film and the installs that we do, and they. Coach Webb, for us, it's really good when you have someone like, Walker Wells on the defense to do all the checks. And he actually, last Friday, and not a lot of people know this, he was actually sick, and he got scratched 3 hours before the game time. So as a head coach, I'm like, wait, so my general that's on the defense who does all the checks is not going to be there? So we're just like, hey, we try to, we tell the guys it's next man up. And so we, as a coaching staff, we adapted the call plays and the checks and that kind of stuff. But it's definitely good to have him back on the field for Friday night against Page. But yeah, we
should have done the old Hugh Freeze up in the hospital bed in the press box.
I mean, he was pretty bad off, but he's doing really well now. Yeah, I could just like see Bucky up there, up top in a Gertie, like, hey, buddy, Bucky, you good? So yeah.
Hey, let's talk about your special teams, Coach Rathbone. After week 1, you were very upset. You said, "Look, we played terrible." What kind of strides in week 2 did you make?
Well, we didn't get a field goal blocked. I mean, that's a good thing, I guess. I think we did miss one. But, I mean, listen, we got very talented guys, kickers. I mean, we got the kid that's going to Arkansas. We got the sophomore. He's a very, very good kicker. We just got to execute, and it's a timing thing. It's staying on your steps. Don't wait to see the ball on the tee. I mean, you got to be in the process, those type of things. And we worked very hard this week and last week on getting that, and we're slowly getting better. And to me, I feel like that's going to be the last thing to really come around for any team is your special teams, because you don't put the 50 minutes a day or an hour a day into it.
Coach Atkins, talk about your special teams. How have they progressed here in the first couple of games?
Well, we made an extra point last week. Got a good snap, good hold, good kick. So that's the improvement there. I think, as far as, our punt team, which is not a good thing, but I think we're pretty sound on that as far as execution when it comes to that. Like he was saying, you don't spend a lot of time with special teams, so we've punted the ball a lot this past 2 weeks, so we've actually had that extra practice, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. For us, it's kickoff return. That front line of being able to, hey, we got to pick up upper blocks, that kind of stuff. Because you look back there and you've got you've got Lucas Young, Luke Thompson, and Sean Gacka, probably the three most fast and dynamic guys on the team. That any one of those guys catch that ball, like they have the ability to take it to the house. We just got to give them a chance to get that motor going. And I felt like we've been lacking. But Coach DeFato's done a really good job this week of overemphasizing on You got to, once the ball's kicked away, you got to turn it this certain degree, run to this landmark, pick up this guy, and give us a chance, kind of thing.
Let's talk about tonight's game specifically. Again, we're talking about. I would say it's another kind of Battle of Franklin. It's not the original battle. Well, maybe the original, but it's not the one people talk about. But a Page visiting Franklin High School, again, just a few miles apart, as Coach Rathbone said, but maybe about 45 minutes when you're talking about traffic.
Yeah.
Coach, talk about your offense tonight. What kind of improvements are you looking tonight as you match up with Franklin?
Well, we just want to be consistent. I mean, Franklin's a good team. They were good. These kids that they're playing have been playing since their sophomore year. And I'm really impressed with some of the things that they're doing. So we just got to be consistent. And again, I know it's old coach speak, but we got to play us. We got to continue to execute and not have the missed block. I mean, last week we didn't even block the nose 3 times. I mean, just let him go. And so what the center was doing, I have no clue. So I mean, it's just simple things like that. Get on your blocks, stand on your blocks, finishing your blocks, running hard, holding on to the ball. Don't have the turnovers. Don't have stupid penalties. It's the same thing every game, no matter who we or anybody plays. I mean, you want to execute any offense that executes, they'll be successful. And it's going to be the same thing for Franklin. If they execute, they're going to be successful against our defense. That's just football 101, and that's ultimately what we work at every single week is to try to get better at executing.
Talk about your team tonight, Coach Adkins, facing what I think may be the best defense you play all year.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, you definitely can see a lot of talent on the other side of the ball. For us offensively tonight, we just got to sustain drives. Like I think what killed us last week was so many 3-and-outs. We definitely got to capitalize on, defense playing sound and special teams being able to flip the field for us and just try to capitalize and score points when we can. Because, like I said, they can attack and score 7 at a moment's notice for sure. So for offensively, it's just sustaining those drives and keep grinding out 4 yards of play.
I think most of you guys as football coaches would say a lot of times games are won up front. But let's talk about this, Coach Rathbone. I'm really looking forward to this matchup tonight. Your defense against that wide receiver group. Talk about the challenges they pose for your team.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about their receivers, and they're really, really good. They should be talked about. But the last couple of years, I've really fell in love with their quarterback. I think he does a good job. I personally love a quarterback and get in and out of trouble, and he can move him around. You got to get him to the ground. Last year, he broke our containment and threw one up, and they caught it for a touchdown. So I'm really impressed with their quarterback, and he's the guy to me we got to contain, make him throw from the pocket, which makes those throws a little bit longer, which gives the defensive backs a little bit, longer to react to the pass. So, but containing those 2 big receivers is going to be an issue for us, and hopefully we can get to the quarterback up front and hopefully not give him time to get the ball out.
Coach, talk about your defense facing what I think looks kind of like a 6A offensive line.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, they're definitely they're tall and wide for sure. That's something we kind of looked at. I think for us, once again, it's just playing sound defense. They got playmakers everywhere. Inside the box, outside the box. So it's just at the end of the day, doing your job. If your job is to to cover the running back, if they spin him in motion, you got to take him. If your job is to get underneath the pulling guard, you got to get underneath him, stuff like that. Once again, it's just the little things, but I think as far as that, just doing your job defensively and giving yourself a chance.
Coach Adkins, Coach Rathbone, I appreciate you guys being here today. I know you're busy.
Thank
you for having us.
Looking forward to tonight's matchup again, Page High School traveling to Franklin High School. Thank you for joining us for the Coaches Show. We'll see you next time.